Superintendent Treasurer. My name is Kevin Curry. I'm one of the faculty here in Ag and Extension Education. We are so happy to have you here to celebrate Michaela on her journey. This is our final presentation for her, and she's going to answer 3 questions during our quick 30 minutes together. Who does she aspire to be as a teacher? What opportunities has she experienced to become a better ag teacher? And how is she going to maximize her student internship this semester, upcoming spring semester at Dover Area High School? She's going to have 30 minutes. Michaela, they're all yours.
All right, thank you guys for coming to my final presentation. If you didn't get a half sheet of paper when you walked in the door, you can go ahead and scan this QR code to follow along with my presentation. And it just adds some supplement to what I'm going to be talking about. So it looks like you're
There's like this little sleepy thing. It's got to wake up from a nap. Yep, you fix it. Now you just have to click on the main screen to make that go away. And then it'll work.
Okay, so before I stand up here and talk to you for 30 minutes about what I've done this semester, I'm going to tell you a little bit more about who I am, even though all of you pretty much know me. I grew up in Honeybrook. It's a small town inside Chester County, PA. And there I joined my local ag program. So the picture at the top, that's me and the 2 presidents before me and the president that took over after me in my FFA chapter. And through FFA, one of my SAE projects was raising my dog. And the only reason why I was allowed to get her was because my ag teacher let me keep her inside of our animal room. And I do still breed her now. And then I came to Penn State and I met 2 of my families. One of my families is my ag ed cohort. Thank you guys for all being here. And then my second family, if you can't tell looking around the room, is my DPS family with everybody wearing their letters. And then I just wanted to recognize 2 people that couldn't be here today. One is my boyfriend, Matt. He's currently at Fort Lee, Virginia at officer training for the Army. And then the other is my grandfather that passed away earlier this year. So going into who I aspire to be as a teacher. And this is my teaching philosophy, and it can really be summed up in 3 words: inform, create, and grow. So inform is that classroom instruction part that really elevates everything. And then you go into create, which is SAE, or supervised agriculture experience. So through this, students are able to pick a project and work by themselves outside of school. It could be a job placement, it could be doing research. There's so many opportunities there. And then also with create, doing hands-on learning inside the classroom. I don't want my students just to hear about it. I want them to actually do it. And then you go into grow. And when I think about this is FFA. Through FFA, there's so many opportunities for you to grow personally and in content area. So you grow in your leadership, you grow in your career because you can do CDE events or leadership development events. You use that content knowledge and apply it to those competitions. And then you also become critical thinkers through being on an officer team and going through different situations with that. And then up at the top, there's community involvement. And that's just kind of floated up there because through all of these, I want the community to be involved. I want to bring industry leaders into my classrooms. I want my students to go into those industry and work for them. And then with FFA, I want us to be involved in the community and doing service events. So moving on to my classroom management, we'll start with my classroom expectations with my cute little posters. This one's bee themed. So most of them are pretty self-explanatory. The first one is to be yourself. I want my students to come to my classroom and not try and be anybody else, because everybody has something to bring to the table. And the rest of them, be respectful, be responsible, be safe, because we will be working in a lab. And then the last one, be intentional. I want my students to be intentional about the work that they turn in, about who they're being as a human being, and what they're giving to our classroom. And then next is our daily procedures. Also, again, pretty standard for a classroom. Come to class prepared. That can really sum up the rest of them. Bell-to-bell work, because that deteriorates the keeping off if the students are always doing something. And then turn work on time, on top of conversations, and having a yes mindset. So a yes mindset is I want my students to come in and say, yes, because you don't grow from saying no. I want them to walk into the classroom and I say, are you ready for the day? Yes. Or do you want to participate in this CBE event? Yes. Or at least try it once. And then lastly, we have my classroom consequences. Hopefully, my procedures and my expectations will avoid from having to use these. But if needed, first they would get a verbal warning, hey, please put your phone away. Second, they would get another verbal warning and a conversation with me. Why are we having our phone out today? Is there something going on? And then third, it would be a call home and possibly a detention if it's needed. And then unfortunately, if it keeps continuing, they will get an office referral and then the office would call home for them. And all of these do follow Dover's student handbook of their disciplinary actions as well. So going into my ideal program setup and what I would want in my program. So first of all my first year students would start out with an intro to ag class. This would just be a very broad class of what agriculture is, and then go a little bit into each topic of animal science, plant science, ag mechanics, natural resources, and maybe some global involvement. This would also be their first taste of SAE and starting their project and getting used to the AAT website, which houses their SAE project in. And then they would also get involved in FFA. This is where they would start going to their first chapter events, getting involved in those CDEs and LDE competitions. And then from there, they kind of have 4 different pathways they could choose from. One is animal science that would have small and large. And there are some example units in there, like small pet care and digestion. And then plant science, which I went more heavy in because that's my specialty area. I love plant science. So I had greenhouse management, and they would talk about how to actually grow plants and integrate pest management. And then they would go into floriculture and learn how to actually create these floral designs. And then my personal favorite is propagation, and they would be able to recreate plants, make new ones, and they would do that by grafting. And then next, moving into ag mechanics, I'm not as strong in this area, so it would just be an ag mechanics 1, which would be a basic overview to all the topics in ag mechanics like welding, woodworking, electrical wiring. And then going into ag mechanics 2, which would then again be the same thing, but more advanced. And natural resources, this is an area that I do not have a lot of background in, but I would love to incorporate it into my program because I think it's a very useful area. So one example of class would be wildlife, and they could talk about population control and how deer are controlled. And then aqua science, and that would be like water testing. So going to my lab management plan, we had to create a $15 project, which is this right here. I know the picture kind of looks like a geek, and it's not. But it's an hanging plant hanger. I just thought it was really cute, something that would be useful that we could make in the classroom, give it to your mom on Mother's Day, put it outside your house. So the idea with this is that my ag mechanics class and my plant science class would team up together. The ag mechanics class would design it, and they would create it together, and then the plant science class would find a way to market it. It would be either marketed in our spring plant sale, or we could even go door to door to different community stores and ask them if they would put it out front with our FFA chapter written on it. So SAE integration and how I would incorporate this into my classroom. SAE again is supervised agricultural experiences. This is where the students get to pick a project and they run with it outside of school. So first, I would do SAE visits. I think it's really cool when teachers go and see what the students are doing because it recognizes them. Because then they come back to class and I can say, hey, Jimmy did a really awesome job. His project is really cool. You should go ask him about it. And then these kids would be motivated by that, and so would the student that we visited. I'd also incorporate it as a grade because if we're preaching as teachers that supervised agriculture experiences are super important, it should be incorporated in our classroom also as a grade. And then I'd have SAE work nights. So the website that SAE is housed in is super confusing and it changes all the time. So I want to be there for my students to help them work through that website. and then FFA and how it would be used in my classroom. Again, I would incorporate it in grade, especially in that intro to ag class, because I want them to go to meetings. I want them to be involved in these career development events and leadership development events. And then I also want us to be involved in the community. So bringing the community into our FFA chapter, going out and doing service projects. And then recruitment. As you can see through this picture, this is my officer team, basically all the way through high school. And there's only one guy in it. And this is a more reoccurring problem of we're having issues getting males into the agriculture education. So one thing that I think would help would be going in to elementary schools and starting young, having your FFA chapter or your ag department go into an elementary school, doing a program with them for a day. Because then those elementary schools will be like, oh yeah, I remember when the FFA came and did this really cool thing and I got to pet a bunny. And then keep doing that, not just in elementary schools, but also in middle schools, all the way up until they actually come to high school so that you're known. And then also students are your best recruiters. You shouldn't be the one standing up there telling them. It should be your students because they think students are way cooler than you are. And also sometimes they are. And then community involvement. One unit that I really want to try to involve the community in is my hydroponics unit. So basically students would grow, let's say lettuce hydroponically, and then they would donate it to the community food bank. And then after that, we would have a community night where community members would come in and the students would give a lesson about, what hydroponics is. They would make a mini lesson or make a mini hydroponic system. And the food bank would also come in and talk about food insecurity and how you can help your local community and globally with that. So moving on to the second portion of the presentation, what opportunities have I engaged in to become a better educator? So some key courses that I've taken is Course 202. This is a plant propagation class. I learned a lot of hands-on techniques of actually how to propagate. I also learned a ton of plant anatomy and why propagation works. And then I also learned safety. If you don't know, I cut off my whole entire fingernail and the tip of my finger in this class. So because of that experience, I'm going to make my students wear propagation gloves or some type of gloves because it hurts. And then Animal Science 201, you've just about heard everybody say that this class has been the best for them with learning animal science knowledge and techniques. I learned so many lab techniques. Not only did I learn about ruminant digestion, I also got to touch a ruminant digestive system and cut into it. And then 350 and 349 is our agricultural mechanics class. And here I learned a ton of hands-on knowledge about ag mech. I've never welded before, and I learned how to weld in this. And it was a really interesting, fun experience. And all of these classes I pulled from to make my lesson and unit plans. Going into my certifications and minors, I am a national state tractor machinery operator program instructor. That is a handful. And I'm also a Google Educator Level 1, and my minor is horticulture, which is where my love for plant science comes from. And some professional development events that we've gotten to participate in throughout the year and semester is National Association of Agriculture Educators. We went down to New Orleans and participated in the FAST Symposium. So we got to talk to other pre-service teachers that are also about to go student teach. And that was super helpful to learn about what their experience has been like. Also attending other professional workshops, learning more about SAEs and just how to have a safety day is one of the workshops that I went to. And then also the Inquiry Institute, you can see me now really focusing on pouring that water up there. Inquiry is basically letting students be in charge of what they learn, and you basically stepping back as a facilitator. So through this experience, I brought a lot of those labs and different activities into my classroom that I'll be utilizing during student teaching. Another work experience that I've had is my internship for the past 3 years with Berks and Chester County 4-H. So through here, I've planned, implemented, and designed a bunch of different summer camps for kids. all through the areas of animal science, plant science, even engineering and robotics, which is something that I'm not totally comfortable with. So I learned a lot about working with different kids and different age groups. I worked with 5-year-olds all the way up to like teenagers. And I definitely became a better educator through it. I've also worked for the National State Clearinghouse for the past 3 years. And the biggest thing that helped me through this internship is learning more about AFNR standards. Those are our ag standards. I evaluate curriculum and then compare them to AFNR and see if they align. So through that, I've been able to use them in my lesson plans, my unit plans really easily from just being able to understand what those AFNR standards mean. And then I also make cool marketing products. If you went to National Convention, this is one of the ones that was there. If you walk by the, say, National Clearinghouse booth. And then Delta Theta Sigma fraternity. So some things that I've gained from this professionally is networking. We've had really cool opportunities to meet with the Secretary of Ag, Russell Redding, and U.S. Representative Glenn Thompson. Through this, we got to have some communication about, what's happening in agriculture right now, and especially how has COVID affected it. And then I've also gained a ton of leadership experience through this. I've held multiple leadership positions, including president and vice president. And then what experiences do I have with diverse learners? So I've had the opportunity to have 2 really cool experiences. One with Easter Seals, which is a program for students with disabilities. Most of my students during this program did have Down syndrome. And then migrant education. This is more with having ESL students. Most of my students spoke Spanish. And then also more of a social economic difference regarding income level. So some things that I learned is just being able to be adaptable. So the language barrier was really difficult for me because I don't speak Spanish and I had a translator speaking over me on Zoom. So that was something I had to adapt to, and adding something as simple as Spanish to my slides was easy so that the kids could understand. And then also with Easter Seals, being able to include students that love to talk, and then ones that hate to talk, and then ones that have really good motor skills, and then ones that don't. So being able to find an activity where both of them and each section of those kids can be able to work. And then lastly, how am I prepared to maximize my student teaching internship? So I'll be teaching at Dover Area High School. This is a 3-teacher program. So my CT is Miss Brittany Marsh, and then Ms. Alex Barzillo and Mr. Pete Bowman are the teachers that work there. So they really focus in every single area of ag. They focus in animal science, plant science, and ag mechanics. And they also are a pretty large program. They have about 220 students just in ag total. So their facilities there are really awesome. They have 3 classrooms that can all pretty much be utilized for labs. And then they have a new greenhouse. The school was just built, so it's only like a year old. So all of these facilities are brand new. And then we also have a huge ag mechanics shops. These 2 pictures don't even cover how big it is. The one on the left is a metalworking portion of it, and then the one closest is the woodworking / paint booth engine area. And then they also have a computer lab that we can utilize. So Dover's FFA is pretty strong. They have about 30 to 40 active members, and they're also pretty strong in the community. They always volunteer at the York Fair and different events like that. And they're also pretty strong in CDs like vet science, tractor driving, livestock evaluation, and horse judging. So different strengths that Dover have. They're really awesome at being involved in the community, which I love. I've talked about that a ton today. So I'm really excited to get to be a part of that. And then they also have a strong FFA chapter. The picture down below is a picture of their FFA tying blankets. Sierra is also here, that's in that picture. And then they have a great relationship with all of their teachers. All 3 of them really get along great, and I'm super excited to go into that positive environment and be a part of that. And they're also super organized, which is very important for a program, and I'm glad that I'm stepping into a place that's organized. And then some areas for growth that me and Brittany have talked about. She's really trying to incorporate SEs more, and especially moving into that research essay portion and trying to get students involved in that. And then my student teaching schedule. So over the course of the next 15 weeks in the spring, I'll be teaching 3 different courses. Ag mechanics is the one that I'm teaching all the way through. So I'm teaching safety, woodworking, welding, metal, electrical wiring, and plumbing. And then horticulture is my next largest class load that I'm taking on, which I'm super excited for. It's plant anatomy, pathogens, and propagation, and then hydroponics, which I've actually never worked on. So I'm super excited to learn more about that. And animal science, I have nutrition and reproduction, and my kids are going to think I'm crazy because one of the inquiry labs I'm putting in is an estrus party. And then my strengths while I go into student teaching that I think I can bring to Dover is being a lifelong learner and having a growth mindset. So when I'm not good at something right off the bat, I'm not afraid to keep trying. I'm not afraid to keep doing it. Just like welding, I've never done it before. I'm definitely not the best at it, but I'm going to keep improving on that. And then seeking out opportunities. One example of this is getting an internship my freshman year. When I talked to some older students, they told me I would never get one because I wasn't a senior teacher and they were going to keep me out. Well, I kept applying to different things and I got one. And then creating connections. As you can tell, there's a ton of BPS people here. I'm in a house, we have almost about 40 members. I have a connection with each and every single one of them, and I can always relate to them on something. And that's something that I can bring and do with my students. And then I'm also pretty organized. My lesson plans and unit plans in Google Drive are all in different folders. They're super organized. And then I'm also compassionate. And I think sometimes as teachers, we might forget that those students have lives outside of high school, just as we do. And we need to remember that because things that are really super important in their lives is not in ours. And then my goals as I go into student teaching. I want to gain more content knowledge and skills. As I've already said, I'm not as strong in ag mechanics, which is why I'm teaching that all the way through. And also hydroponics, I'm really excited to learn about. Increasing the variability in my lesson plans. So this means I don't want my students to be doing the same thing every day. And during the class period, I don't want them to be sitting listening to me journal for 60 minutes. Because I'm sure even now you guys are getting tired, right? Yeah. So I don't want my students to feel that. And then I want to engage and network with other ag educators and people in the community. Because this is where your best resources are going to come from. This is where people are going to donate things to your ag program, and they're going to know who you are, and they're more willing to help you out if you have a great relationship with them. I'm also really excited to learn more about running an FFA chapter. I was in FFA all the way through high school, but I don't know how to take students to national convention. I don't know what it takes to take students to CD events, and I'm really excited to learn more about that and see how that goes. And then also a big one that I'm pretty sure everybody is going to have as their goal is balancing work life and home life. Especially being a student teacher, this could be hard because we have a lot of work to do. We don't have lesson plans saved up like veteran teachers do. So thank you guys for listening and thank you all for coming. If there's any questions, feel free to ask.
Thank you, Michaela. Kendra will be translating our online audience. Online audiences, if you have any questions for Michaela, please put those in the chat. She will translate those. We'll be cycling back and forth between the face-to-face and online audience and their questions. Michaela, I'll start us off. You talked about some experiences you've had with diverse learners. I would love for you to elaborate more on that in terms of how you see yourself as a future ag teacher. What is the role of an ag teacher in the ag ed program with working with diverse students? How can they serve the diverse students in your communities?
Sure. So the question was, how can I serve diverse learners inside my classroom? So I think something that they bring to the classroom is there's always different ways of doing things. And sometimes as people say, a typical learner, we don't always think about that. I think that having varied activities, even just for someone that maybe you don't have disability, but people learn better hands-on and some people learn better visually. So having those different options in my classroom of you can also look at it, but let's also create it. And then also let's listen to something. Some people are audio learners. So just presenting options to the different students and different ways of learning to help them best.
Thank you. Nothing in the online audiences yet? Mr. Panel, Carson, go ahead.
So Michaela, I'm going to assume fantastic presentation. I'm going to assume that you have had a teacher that was either challenging or somebody you classify as maybe not being a good teacher since being here at Penn State. Is there something that you have taken away from your experience with that teacher that you're going to keep in mind as you enter into the classroom now, stepping across the other side of the table?
Yes. So the question was if I've ever had a bad teacher at Penn State and how can I use that experience and change it during my student teaching and being an educator. So something that I've experienced just in being in college in general is very lecture heavy, which is great. You need that content information, but also having that hands-on applied knowledge is super important. So I think, yes, there are days that you need to lecture, but just changing up, having 15 minutes of lecture and then maybe doing a small activity. Like one of the units or one of the lessons that I just made is a very lecture heavy day where we're talking about the essential nutrients. So what I'm going to do during that is bring in examples of nutrients in different foods. So we're going to lecture for about 5 to 10 minutes, and then I'm going to get out the food and they can taste it and tell me which nutrient they think it is. And then keep doing that during PowerPoint so that it's keeping them following along and so they're not falling asleep.
We do have a question in the chat from Deborah Seeger. It says, we were fortunate to have you serve as a 4-H summer assistant in North Western County these past 3 years. How will you take that experience with non-formal education into your classroom?
Awesome. Okay. So the question was, how will I use my experience in 4-H in my classroom? I think a really big thing that I learned from that is that 4-H and FFA aren't very different, and I don't know why we don't collaborate more. So something that I want to do is try and get involved with my local 4-H chapter as an FFA advisor and kind of bring them in to our events and do events together because they show animals and we show animals too. Why not work together and both teach each other how to do it? So that's one thing that I've learned and that I want to incorporate into my classroom.
So you mentioned you're going to go to Dover, which is a multi-teacher program. So how do you plan on working with multiple teachers, and in the future, do you see yourself working with a multi-teacher program? Would you prefer to be a single teacher program?
Yeah. So the question was, how do I feel about working with 3 teachers and how is that going to work? And then what's my preference? To be honest, I don't know exactly how that looks right now. Miss Marsh is my cooperating teacher, so I'm going to be mainly working with her. But I know that I'll be doing a genetics lesson or unit with Alex. So just coming into her classroom and seeing how she teaches and seeing how her class works. And then I'm also going to be working with Mr. Bowen, especially in that ag mechanics part because he is the main ag mechanics teacher there, you could say. So I'm definitely going to rely on him to help me gain those skills. But I'm excited to see how that relationship turns out with all 3 of them. And then my preference for a program, I've never experienced a 1-teacher program, but I think that I would prefer a multi-teacher program just because then you have more resources. I feel like you're able to do more sometimes and you can grow your program even bigger than just having 1 teacher, because ultimately the goal is to get more students involved in agricultural education.
Michaela, could you tell me about the importance of reflective practice and how you demonstrate that?
Sure. So reflective practice and why it's important, I think that when you do something, you should reflect on it and see, what went wrong, what went good, what could have you improved on. And ultimately, it just helps you become a better person and better educator. So something that I plan on doing is after each lesson that I teach during student teaching is going back in that lesson plan and writing notes on it, saying, okay, this activity worked really well, or like this actually took this long instead of the 15 minutes I allotted to it. And something else that I do personally is keeping a journal with me and just writing down my thoughts and reflecting on how everything in my day went and how I felt about things.
Thank you.
Interesting.
Michaela, given the diversity that is the agricultural industry, and you identified a couple content subject areas that you didn't necessarily feel the most confident in, what are some ideas as to ways you can supplement instruction in those subject and content areas that you may not have the most experience or confidence in?
So how could I supplement my instruction with areas that I'm not confident in?
Yes.
So one thing that I absolutely want to do as soon as I get to Dover is actually go into that ag mech shop and work on my skills. And me and Brittany have talked about this a lot of staying after school sometimes or in between our free breaks and actually going into that shop and working more so that I can become more confident, and also relying on the teachers around me to, help me out. Also, I think just being real with the students and saying, hey, I'm not the best at this, but like your goal is to be better than I am. I can show you how to do it. I can show you what not to do. I can help you. But in the end, you're going to be way better than I am. And that's the goal there. And then also ways to supplement that, I think going to professional development events and going to workshops. I know there was just one with greenhouse management that they had over the summer. Continuing to go to these different conferences where I got to do hands-on labs.
Oh, that's mine.
Sorry.
Actually, mine's a statement. So describe for me, this popped up. There we go. Describe for me the professional dispositions of an excellent educator.
So the first thing that comes to mind is BCOG, which means being businesslike, behavior, having enthusiasm in your classroom, having clarity in your instruction and what you're saying. O is opportunities to learn, so presenting students with those opportunities. And then V is variability that I talked about with changing things up in my lessons. So those are 5 things that I think of, that I think of with dispositions for teachers and something that you should have.
Thank you.
I actually want to circle back around on that. Because the BCOB are abilities and characteristics of effective teaching, but I think that John was looking at dispositions or attitudes and perspectives. And so there's not a list that you've been taught on that, really just your opinion. But what do you believe is a professional disposition of an educator?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Okay, so disposition I think is definitely having a growth mindset. So being able to take an experience that you have, if you're not the best at it, and being able to grow upon that. So like I said for Ag Mech, I'm not the best at welding, but I know that I can improve upon it. I know that I can do it. I know that if I go into the shop and actually do it, I'm going to improve. It's not that I just say, no, I'm inherently bad at this and I just stop. So I think that's important to have as a teacher. Cheyenne, I know you've been raising your hand.
Yeah. Okay, so what's the best piece of advice that you could give to a first year student, either in the college of ag sciences or agricultural research?
Sure. So some advice I have for first year students, definitely plan. Like plan out your college experience, look at your classes and like decide what semester you're gonna take them in. Because I personally wanted to enjoy my senior and like junior year. So I planned it out that I would only have 12 credits my whole entire senior and junior year. And how I did that is I loaded up my freshman and sophomore year, and then I also decided to take summer classes over summer because I'm weird like that. But it was really helpful, and I got to enjoy and learn a lot more from my classes because I wasn't stressed about having different assignments, especially while going through, the semester and having to create all our units and lesson plans. Also plan ahead on that, start the summer, man.
Michaela, when I look at that group of educators on your screen. I'm curious to what you would say your greatest contribution to the success of that group would be. How did you contribute to PSU Ag Ed 22 so far?
Sure. So some things that I've done to contribute to my group, I think just always being there as a person to go to, talk to, and leaving that door open. Also, with a lot of plant science content, the amount that I've sent to Thomas, Adeline, Dylan, I've helped a lot of people on, what could you be teaching in your plant science unit or your landscape unit, and just kind of helping them out and sending them different resources that I found and that I've been using.
So you showed us a very well-rounded curriculum plan that you hope for your future program. How do you plan to incorporate your OAC into designing that curriculum plan?
Sure. So incorporating my occupational advisory committee. So if you don't know what that is, it's basically industry leaders in the community that are on a board, and you basically talk through what your curriculum is, how it incorporates the industry, and you make connections of how they can help your program as well. So I think having a board made up of someone from each of those areas would definitely help, and incorporating them into that, bringing them into the classroom, having them actually talk to the kids, having the kids know them. Because like my school might have had an occupational board, but I didn't know about it. Like I didn't know who those members were. And I think that's important for students to know them and actually have a connection with them in that industry. So if they want to do an SAE project in their business or in their field, they would have a connection already to go to them and work through that.
Any questions from the audience?
Most looking forward to.
So what am I most looking forward to during my student teaching? Honestly, gaining more experience. I'm excited for everything, but getting more experience and actually becoming a better educator. And then also on the flip side of that, just having an impact in the student's life. Knowing that like, hey, the student relied on me on something, or I made the student's day feel better, having a personal impact on at least one student.
What made you choose Dover as the where you wanted to go student teach?
Sure. So why did I choose Dover? One, I wanted a multi-teacher program, and I thought it was awesome that they had 3 teachers. Second of all, they had courses in every area of ag. And that's something that I really wanted to do because I didn't want to limit myself to picking a place that is super heavy in ag mechanics, but doesn't have plant science, or super heavy in animal science, but doesn't have ag math. I also picked them because I evaluated myself. Being honest, ag math is my weakness, and I wanted to go somewhere that had a great ag math program so that I could build up that side of me, because I didn't need to go to a program that was super heavy in plant science, because I feel like I'm already strong in that. I know that I can learn more through Dover in plant science, but I needed that ag math push.
Questions from Michaela? Seeing none, let's help please congratulate her one more time on all of her accomplishments. So that will conclude the public portion of this examination. We ask that our next presentation will start at 2 o'clock, that you retired at 2:14. There are snacks and beverages there for your consumption. Thank you so much for your time. We will continue the rest of her final presentation once you all leave.